Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Matt, welcome to Consulting Leaders. Happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Let's jump straight into it. What's the origin story, Matt? What got you into all this?
Sure. I think, as a child, I always had ideas. It could have been ideas for things to invent. It could have been business ideas, just things to explore. So I think I had a natural kind of inclination to someday become an entrepreneur. But it wasn't something that I really set out to do. It wasn't planned. Back in 2002, I got a job at Salesforce, and I worked there through 2005. And I loved working there. It was a great job. I can only remember, I think, maybe one or two times where I was like upset about something. And one of those times was logging my expense reports. So part of my job was to travel. And at the end of traveling, I had to log my expense reports. Most people can't stand doing it. I couldn't stand it either. But what really bothered me was that we were using a third-party tool to log our expense reports. And here I was working at Salesforce. My job was to build out Salesforce for our customers. And I was like, why are we using a third-party tool? I can build this. I had actually already built expense management functionality for our customers. So I submitted a suggestion. We had a suggestion email box where you could suggest anything you wanted, open forum. And I said, we should really be using our own application for expense management. I built it already. I can show it to you. It'd be great for marketing. Like, what a great story to say, look, we use it in-house. And it was rejected. And I remember thinking to myself, if I ever have my own company, I'm going to listen better to my employees' ideas. That was the one thing that really, years later, it's been 20 years, I still remember that. But my job while I was there towards the end was traveling. Every week I'd go to a different place in the country, in the US. And my job was to set up a new customer from start to finish in 5 days, 5 business days. So I'd show up on Monday morning, learn about the company. And by Friday, we had loaded their data and I'd given a training, and then I'd leave. And almost every week, I'd always get a job offer. The owner or whoever I was talking to would say, if you ever want a job, you can work here, type of thing. And I always said, no, I'm happy where I am. And I go to the next city, the next week. So it really wasn't my goal or my intention to start a Salesforce consulting practice. But in 2005, I got an offer from a startup that I had a personal connection to. And I felt bad saying no, because they really were looking to me to help them. And so I told my manager at Salesforce that I had to leave. I said I thought it would only take like 6 months, a year at the most. And so I resigned and took that offer. And that got me out of Salesforce. But I was still doing the same work. I was basically helping that startup with their CRM and things like that. After a couple months, the writing was on the wall that it was not going to work out. Not just me, but the company itself. It was not going to work out. And so I went to the founders who I was friendly with, and I said, I'll just go back to Salesforce. Don't worry about it. Like I can take care of it. You guys, see if you can right the ship. But they were really wonderful people. And they said, no, we committed to 6 months. So stick around for 2 more months. And I didn't have much to do for those 2 months. Coincidentally, I had recently got married. And the year before, I had moved back to LA from the Bay Area where I had been living. So there was a lot of change going on in my life. And so during those 2 months, instead of calling up my old manager at Salesforce and saying I'm ready to come back, I thought maybe this is a sign that I should take 6 months, just do an experiment and see if I could, do my own thing, start my own business. And that really was the kind of the start. It wasn't this like big moment that I had an epiphany. It was just, a lot of chaos in my life. And I saw this opportunity where I could, now's the time to do it because it can't get much worse.
I love that. It's always good to start in those big corporates because you do learn a lot that you can then implement in your own business. talking from a point where I can relate. What's what's the problem that you help people solve now, Matt? Like, what is it that you're helping people achieve exactly?
Yeah, so most of our customers are trying to use Salesforce to improve their efficiency, but it really can be for any aspect of the organization. And we work with all sorts of different industries. So we work with nonprofits, we work with for-profits, we work with the government even. So there's not a lot of specific use cases that we exclusively focus on. But the high level goals are trying to be more efficient with less, and using technology, usually it's Salesforce, to kind of gain those efficiencies. So that there's not one thing that we only do. And MK Partners is different from most Salesforce partners. Most partners, if you take the messaging from the Salesforce partner team, they say, pick one industry, pick one product line, and focus just on that. And I've always said the opposite. Our specialty, because it was my specialty, was really kind of having a deep knowledge of the Salesforce platform, the underlying functionality, and being able to custom tailor it to the needs of our clients. So instead of telling the clients, this is how you need to change your business processes in order to use Salesforce, we do the opposite. We just listen and we hear what they're saying and how they currently are operating. And then we really custom tailor the platform to fit those processes. Well, of course, we make improvements and we try to make suggestions where it makes sense because we have this new set of tools. But we don't want them to have to change the way they do business just because they want to use this new technology. So the high level goal is always, be more efficient, be more effective. That could be in sales, obviously, that's like a core use case. It could be in customer service, another core use case, marketing, of course, too. But the majority of our projects actually have nothing to do with the out-of-the-box functionality. It's really unusual use cases. It could be applications that are coming in on the website for loans, and we're helping to evaluate those applications and respond to them quickly and things like that. We do a lot of entertainment work, so it could be keeping track of projects, whether it's TV or movie, or even music that they're working on, things like that. And then, like I said, we also work with nonprofits, which is a totally different type of industry that has different issues and requirements. So there's not one single business process, but the high level goal is, be more efficient through technology.
So I like that. You mentioned non-profits, for-profits, government institutions. Can you tell us a bit more about who is it that you help exactly? Like, who's making the decision? Those organizations are basically facing completely different challenges in some areas. Some areas they do face the same challenges. But so how do you get in touch with the right decision makers when you have such different profiles of people you work with?
Yeah, it's a good question. They're all unique problems, but they really are the same from our perspective, and this is how we kind of think of what we do in general. So we're working with databases, we're working with custom code, and we're trying to automate processes. To us, it doesn't really matter whether you are specifically talking about support tickets or specifically talking about sales deals. Behind the scenes, it's zeros, ones, it's just records in a database. It doesn't really matter what we're talking about. It's going to be this similar solutions across the board. So when it comes to who we talk to or who we work with, it does vary also. Obviously, at smaller organizations, whether it's a small business or a nonprofit, we often are talking to like the very head person, whether it's a CEO or founder or something like that, and they'll bring us in. They're not necessarily involved with the day-to-day for the project. Usually there's some type of point person who's like a subject matter expert that knows the problem, the requirements well. And we work with them to, again, gather the information that's needed to kind of build the solution and figure out, okay, this is the best way to solve these problems. We're going to build these screens, we're going to write this code, we're going to automate these processes, we'll enable reporting, etc. Those subject matter experts are going to exist across all of our customers, but who brings us in is going to vary. The small customers, it tends to be someone very high up. At our largest customers, it's going to be someone lower in the organization, and occasionally we'll have a meeting maybe where we get to meet someone high up. Every once in a while, we might, when we used to go on site more, we would be able to make a presentation and be with the CEO of like a large organization. But on a day-to-day basis, we're interacting with normal folks who, are mid-level, in the organization, and they are responsible for something, and trying to improve that. And so they work with us to try to gain some efficiency, be a little more productive, reduce the headaches, things like that.
It does make sense. I like the positioning. The question I always have in those situations is, how do you brand? How do you market, Matt? How do you get the attention of all those different stakeholders, decision makers? How do you do that? How do you get people to knock on the door? I'm not talking about sales just yet, but really like getting the attention of the right people and triggering a conversation. How do you make that happen?
This is actually one of my biggest pain points. So in addition to being a Salesforce consulting firm, we actually have some Salesforce apps. They're like add-on apps that we've built. And it is really hard to target the right buyer, because if you look at how the platform works, obviously there's someone, an executive, who has decided this is the solution that we want to use. We want to use the Salesforce platform, and maybe they signed the contract and they approve the checks or the wires that go out to pay the bills, right? But then you have the actual end users at the opposite spectrum who are feeling the daily pain of, oh, I got to fill out my expense report and I hate doing it, right? And those are the ones that we really want to appeal to, but they don't have a say in what tools they get to use at the company. And so there's somewhere in the middle, there are managers and VPs who can listen to the employees who are feeling that pain and want to be more efficient, and also have the voice that is going to be heard by the executives of, oh, here's a solution that we could possibly use. So typically the right person is going to be somewhere in the middle, and depending on the size of the organization, it might be just a manager, or it might be like a vice president or director. But how we get their attention is unique for MK Partners, I think. So I started the company over 20 years ago. It's 20 years this March. And prior to that, I was working in the Salesforce space too. And so over all those decades at this point, we've worked with tens of thousands of people, right? So we've had over 1,500 clients at MK Partners. At each client, we interact with at least 10 people. Every customer has at least 10, and we interact with a lot through training and testing and gathering requirements, stuff like that. So it's tens of thousands of people that we've interacted with. And then you add on all the employees at Salesforce that we interact with, partners, other partners in the Salesforce ecosystem, even competitors, we interact with them as well. And so over all that time, we've just kind of built a brand. I like to say we're a small company with a big reputation. And a good reputation too. And so we really don't do traditional marketing. So we don't do ads. Salesforce has a very high price for keywords, and partly that's because they're spending, but also because a lot of large companies are partners, and so they're spending on that as well. And so it really prices out a small company like us. Any marketing we do is more guerrilla marketing. So we go to conferences. I give talks at conferences. Sometimes we're just attending. Sometimes we do get a booth. If it's a small Salesforce conference, we might get a booth to promote our apps, less so to promote the consulting. And then a lot of it is just networking and being personable and being online. And, most of our business is word of mouth. It's referral based. And the only way that can happen is if you know a lot of people.
Amen to that. How do you, I love the guerrilla marketing strategy. How do you move from that, Matt, to a conversation, a sales conversation, an SOW, a letter of engagement, we rock and roll? What does sales motion look like for you after you've done some guerrilla marketing?
Yeah, so this again is where I think we deviate from the standard. I typically say we don't do any marketing or sales. Obviously, that's not entirely true. We do some guerrilla marketing, and we have to do some sales, but we're not very salesy, if that makes sense, especially compared to the sales processes at Salesforce.com, the company, right? So they have, account executives, and they have scripts, and they have processes where they have to go through certain motions and give certain demos and things like that. And we're the opposite. I remember I had a mentor a long time ago who complained to me that our contract was too long. That she didn't want to read it. She's like, just make it easy for me to sign this contract. And I was like, oh, that does make sense. You're right. Why would I make it hard? Like, I'm in California, and there's a lot of lawyers in California, so our contracts tend to be long, but there are things that you can do to improve contracts and make them simpler. And so I did that. I took her advice. And so we do try to make it easy to work with us. And so part of that is on the contracting side. Our contracts are simple. We only put, in terms of what the customer is buying, we only put what they want. We don't force them to buy certain things, but also in the way we interact with them. So like I said, we're not very salesy. We get on the phone. We're passionate about what we do. We're passionate about Salesforce. We're passionate about technology. We want to solve the problems that our clients have. And so we just have that conversation. We're ourselves. We try to be as natural as possible. I'm wearing a t-shirt, right? We don't dress up for meetings. In the past, when we go on site, maybe a little, because it's not as appropriate to show up in person. But now that we're at home, it's messy, right? And they get to have a better sense of who we are, which really helps, I think, from a trust factor. It's not really spending, it's investing, right? Investing in technology is scary. You're taking a risk. There's a chance that the project will go bad. There's a chance that you will look bad as an employee to your superiors, things like that. And so it's a risk. And so we really want them to get to know us and feel comfortable. And so we're honest, we're open. I had another mentor years ago who once asked me, what would you do if a prospect asks you how to solve the problem? And at the time I was very young, and I said, I don't know, I might give a hint and then say, I'll tell you more when you sign the contract. And he told me, no, it's the opposite. Tell them the answer, tell them everything. If they're the kind of prospect that's going to take it and run and never sign a contract with you, you don't want them anyway. But if they're the kind of prospect that says, wow, he answered my question, he answered it quickly and thoroughly and knows what he's talking about, I wonder what else he knows, well, that's going to be a customer that you're going to have for a long time. And so that's really kind of the attitude we take when we're in the sales stage and we're trying to come up with the solution. We do some of that work up front, even though it's not billable and even though we haven't signed a contract yet, because we really want the client to know what they're going to get. It helps to make sure that they're happy later if they know more about what we're going to do once they sign the contract. So we do give them the design, right? We'll give them the solution. Sometimes that's verbally, sometimes it's actually documented. And sometimes we even will do a demo where we build out a custom demo, mock up the solution inside Salesforce and show them here's how it could work. It leads to awkward conversations sometimes when they say, well, that works perfectly. Can I just have that? And I have to then explain, no, you got to pay us for it. I know that I just built it and you asked me about it only a week ago and I already built it in a week, but it's actually going to cost, this much. That can be awkward. But again, we're looking for the right clients, the ones that see what we did, say, that is great. I want that. And then I also want to work with you for a long time. We don't want the ones that just want a quick win and never talk to us again.
Amen to that. I feel this is the perfect segue, Matt, into retention. So obviously you want to retain the clients that are good, the good clients, the ones that you want to work with. How do you make that happen? How do you optimize for retention once you've nailed the guerrilla marketing and sales part of it? How do you retain? How do you engage further with the clients? How do you make that happen?
Yeah. So I think, again, it starts at the beginning. We have those conversations. Salesforce is an investment. Technology is an investment. It tends not to be a one-time spend, and then you never look at it again. And so we have those conversations early on to find out which of our clients are really interested in a short-term win, and then they're not going to talk to us anymore, versus the ones that have plans for the future. And they understand that every year they're going to invest more and more. And some of that investment might be on the licensing side. Some of it might be, with us, but they at least are aware of that and are comfortable with it. And so we try to work more with the clients that have that vision of how technology is going to continually be invested in over time and keep growing. Those are our favorite clients. And it's interesting to see, we have clients who, they start off in one role and we work with them a lot. And then over time, their responsibility at their job has grown that we actually don't get to talk to them as much, because now they have more people who report to them and they're responsible for different applications and things like that. And we're very happy for them, obviously. But those are the best ones, where we're part of their team and we're helping them not only grow their career, but also improve their companies. So it starts at the beginning. And then similar to the sales stage, we try to make it as easy as possible to work with us. So some of our clients like to pay for things on a time and materials project basis. Others, they want things that are easier to calculate per month, and so it's more like a fixed fee. We don't force a client to work a certain way with us. We have different options. We're also very flexible on contracts and flexible on invoicing. It seems kind of petty to argue about due dates for invoices with a client that we've worked with for multiple years. We know they're good for it. Well, what does it matter if they want to pay 15 days later, right? And so we also know that the people that we interact with, they're not usually the ones making these decisions. It's accounting, it's legal. We're not going to put them in an awkward position that they have to go back and ask for an exception because we've been working with MK Partners for a long time and stuff, so and so. So we try to make it as easy as possible to sign the contracts, both the first one and the renewals or repeat contracts. That helps a lot. The other thing is we communicate. Our staff is constantly talking with our clients. So every week, we don't do waterfall. So we don't go away for 6 months or 10 weeks or whatever it may be and then come back. It's really like we're part of their team. Often we'll even use their tools, their apps. So if they're using Slack or Jira or whatever it may be, we'll be inside those. And that way we can communicate with them and they can see our progress and interact with us with things like that. And so that really helps. So we become an extension of their team that they know that they can rely on and they can trust. And so we have clients that have been with us for 14 plus years even, and many that are with 10 years and so on and so forth. And that's because we are part of their company, essentially. We learn their terminology. So we learn, part of our work is to learn the words that they use. That helps us customize their Salesforce, but it also means that when they communicate, we understand what they're asking. We don't need clarification. And so that helps a lot too. And so the clients that we've been working with for years, we can sit down in the room with them if we were to go in person, and it's as if we're part of their team. We don't need clarification. We don't need to go ask somebody else for help or anything like that. We're really kind of embedded, and that helps with the retention. Obviously, there's always going to be difficult conversations where budgets are slashed, and now what are we going to do? But we try to work with our clients, and we've had clients where times got tough. We had to kind of scale back, and then when things get better, we're still there with them. So we don't force the clients to kind of work with us in a certain way. We try to be as flexible as possible.
I like your style, Matt. Let alone the hat collection. If you're listening to this and you don't know what I'm talking about, check out the video. I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curveball question at you now, Matt.
Sure.
It's funny because we kind of hinted at it in the marketing section, but maybe there is something else. What's your number one challenge right now? What's the one nut that you're trying to crack that once you crack, you're gonna take the whole thing to the next level? What would that be for you?
I don't know if I'll ever take it to the next level. That's a good question.
Interesting.
So I think that when you watch movies and watch TV shows and read books, there's this story of what success means, and obviously we see the news and we see these billionaires and things like that. I don't think I'm interested in that, to be honest. We have a small team. We're technically not related, but we know each other so well that we're definitely very good friends, and we think of each other kind of like family, right? We're aware when someone's having a bad day. They can tell when I'm having a bad day, and I can tell when someone else is not feeling well. So we're very close, despite the fact that we're all remote. And I think you lose that when you go to the next level. If you were to grow very quickly, very very fast and large. So I'm not necessarily interested in that. I do have some competitors that have definitely passed us by. Most of them I've seen over the years, a lot of them have 1099 contractors instead of W-2 employees. We've always had W-2 employees. All of our employees, they get benefits, they get salaried, whether there's work to do or not, things like that. And I think, to me, that's more important than necessarily hitting the next level. We do want to grow. We have plans for growing when we are growing. It is difficult. I think that the hardest part of a professional services firm, whether it's technical consulting or not, is that you never have the right amount of business. So you either have too little business and your employees are relaxed, but your owners and management and sales are stressed out, right? And marketing too. Or you have too much business and now your employees are stressed out, but accounting management is happy because we're bringing in more money. It's very hard to grow because you either are going to wait until you have the business till you hire, or you're going to hire early and now you're spending money without being able to necessarily cover it. And so that is the hardest part. We're bootstrapped from day one. When I started the company, there was no outside investment. And so I don't take too many risks when it comes to growth. So that is kind of the nut that's hard to crack, is how do you grow in a way that you're not exposing too much risk, but you're also not stressing out all your employees until you have enough work that you can hire someone new. And I haven't figured it out. It's been 20 years. We've gotten better at forecasting. So we have systems in place that we've built to help us forecast. But at the end of the day, we can't store our time as inventory. So, employees understand that this might be a light month and they can relax more or take time off, but next month's going to be busy. They understand that, but there's only so much time in the day. We can't really make up for it. And that's the hardest part, I think.
So thanks a lot for sharing this, Matt. I want to double click on it. Not necessarily to you, right? Because each situation is different. But to the people listening to us, that's something we tackled, that one of the members of the mastermind actually brought up, and it's interesting, the framing that he brought. He was like, I've solved that problem when I understood that when I have so much demand that I cannot obviously deliver everything, I can increase my prices and I can put people on the waiting list, which sometimes might mean you're losing clients, right? People want the Salesforce implementation or whatever they're offering now and not 6 months from now. But the way I see consulting firms doing it is, if you solve for demand and this is never going to be a worry in the future, then you can hire. And the worst case, you increase your prices so you have the margins to hire better talents or faster talents. I thought it was an interesting perspective, because obviously that's the whole crux of consulting, right? Once you solve demand, how do you solve supply? Once you've solved supply, how do you match it with demand? So interesting challenge. Sorry to hear that this is the one, but it's an interesting one to be in. On the other side of the coin, what's a big opportunity that you see in your space in the next 6 to 12 months? What are you excited to work on?
I'm still excited every day. So after 20 years, so I still learn new things. I'm technical, and so I still learn new things all the time, and so do our team. And we often will have informal meetings where we share what we figured out or what we built. So the little things are still exciting, even just solving small problems, figuring out, we were able to get some code to execute faster. We were getting an error and we couldn't figure it out, and then we figured it out. Little things are still exciting, and that's unique, I think, to our industry. Part of that is that Salesforce has 3 releases every year, and so they're changing stuff on us constantly. But also we work in the bigger realm of technology, and things are always changing there. There's new libraries that we can play with. We build a lot of things outside of Salesforce too that's totally new. And the big picture though, because we're a Salesforce partner, we tend to kind of follow what their investments are. So they acquired Slack a couple of years ago. And that's a communication tool. And what we're seeing now is that Slack is a great way to communicate with each other. So I communicate with our staff with Slack. We communicate with our partners at Salesforce and at other companies via Slack as well. But we're now able to also interact with our data from Slack too. So we can actually have connections between Slack and our Salesforce, and either do searches from Slack, or make changes to records from Slack, or even be notified proactively. So if something is going on in the database, I can get a notification that one of our employees is asking for approval for time off, and I can be in Slack and do it, and I don't even have to log into Salesforce. And so what we're seeing is kind of a shift from the traditional user interface, which really has a lot of clicks involved, to interacting via this communication tool that we were in anyway, right? Because we had it open to be able to communicate with each other. And for better or worse, a lot of our business over the last 20 years has been to build custom user interfaces on top of Salesforce because of all the clicks, right? The standard flow is a lot of clicking, that just to do one thing sometimes. And so we would get hired to build out more efficient user interfaces, be able to save 5 records at once or streamline the process. I think some of that's going to go away for the user interfaces that we build on top of Salesforce. And I think we're going to be building more integration for custom processes with Slack, and then custom interfaces maybe in Slack instead, or potentially even custom interfaces that are not in Slack even, but just like a Chrome extension or a mobile app, or on a website, things like that. So that's one area that I think is growing, and we're going to see some growth there, some opportunity there. Another area that Salesforce has invested in is integration. So they finally closed the deal to acquire Informatica. Informatica has been around for years in the integration space. And again, if you take a step back, it makes sense. Salesforce is a great platform, but it can't do everything, and it shouldn't do everything. But you often still need to get that 360-degree view of your customers. That's kind of like the selling point after all this time is, you log into Salesforce and you can see everything about your customer. Well, that's hard to do with some of the information about your customers in a different system. And so being able to integrate Salesforce more tightly is key to that. And so Informatica is going to help with that. Again, it's somewhat ironic. Integration is one of our core services that we offer. For years, we've always been more technical, and so it's usually custom screens, custom code integration. And so we've built a lot of custom integrations over the years to connect the different systems that our clients have to Salesforce. And so we'll still be building those custom integrations, but I think a lot more will be leveraging Informatica to facilitate it. And it does make Salesforce stickier. It makes us stickier too, so it's a good thing. It's just a change to what we're selling. But that's another area that Salesforce has invested in heavily. And so we expect to see more and more opportunities in that area. And then the final one, which I think everyone listening or watching is already aware of, is that Salesforce has invested heavily in AI and artificial intelligence, along with every other tech firm. And so they have their own offering, but they're also kind of extending the ability to interact with Salesforce to other AI platforms and leverage it to either augment your existing users, right? So ideally, it's to be more efficient, and so your folks can focus on the things that humans do better, like make exception decisions, maybe review things after an AI has handled it, things like that. And that is really in line with what we already do. We help our customers be more efficient, be more productive. We hope that they're using it to scale without having to hire, as opposed to actually downsizing their current workforce. But that's totally out of our control. But those are the 3 high areas where we really see a lot of opportunity, and it works out well that we have a lot of experience in all 3.
Matt Kaufman, ladies and gentlemen. Matt, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
Yeah, so our website is mkpartners.com. That's going to be the best place to find out anything about us. We're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, and all the other socials, so you can check us out there as well.
We'll put all the links in the description. What I can say for sure, Matt, is that you've gained at least 1 new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview.
Thank you.
We are now connected, or at least you have a connection request. Thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.